At 20 years old, Victor Gyökeres was nothing more than a championship flop who couldn't even get into Brighton's first team. At 22, he was being sent on hopeless loans to struggling clubs.
And it's been reported that his priority target for a new striker is Victor Gyökeres.
Now, welcome back to Mufc Realist TV. This is Mick Ruby, of course. I'm Swedish, and I've been following Victor Gökers ever since he played for Bromma Pojkarna up in Stockholm, of course. And the transfer window 2025 is now heating up. And again, stars are aligned. Victor Gökers to join potentially Manchester United to reunite again with Ruben Amorim. Gökeres wants Manchester United. He wants to play under Amorim. Talks has been ongoing for months, and I know that for a fact because I'm talking to his agents as well. He's rejecting majority of the Premier League clubs. So Sporting and Amorim, they do have a strong bond together with Victor Gökers. They do have a gentleman's agreement in place for Victor Gökers. Manchester United and Ruben Amorim wants him as priority striker. But before we continue this video, we need to go down in memory lane to understand from a reject striker to the scoring monster that he is today and why Amorim wants him. Let's do this. Let's go.
Getting written off as just another Swedish striker who wasn't good enough. But fast forward a few more years, and Victor Gyökeres is now one of the most terrifying strikers in world football.
Now here's Gökeres. Can he do better this time? Holds off the defender!
Outscoring Erling Haaland, bulldozing defenses in the Champions League, and making the biggest clubs in Europe scramble to try and sign him. But how on earth did he get here? How did a kid who couldn't even make it at Swansea City go on to humiliate Manchester City with a Champions League hat trick?
Gökeres, hat trick for him!
How did a forgotten loanee become a monster leading Sporting Lisbon to glory? Well, to understand that, we have to go back to where it all started. Victor Gyökeres was born in Stockholm, Sweden in 1998, not in the glitz and glamour of elite football academies, but in the freezing streets where you had to fight for everything you got. Right from the start, the odds were stacked against him. He didn't come from a powerhouse football nation. He wasn't spotted by Barcelona scouts at age 10, and he wasn't the kid with viral YouTube highlight reels. Victor's story was different. It was slower, it was harder, it was lonelier. He grew up working under his father, who coached him at local club IFK Espuden Tellus. There were no golden opportunities, only cold nights, muddy pitches, and endless running drills. But even as a kid, Victor had one thing nobody could teach: hunger. Hunger to get better, hunger to prove everybody wrong. And at 14 years old, that hunger earned him a shot at Bromma Pojkarna, a club famous for producing talents like Dejan Kulusevski. But it wasn't like he showed up and immediately became the star. When Victor first joined, even the academy director said he wasn't good enough. Too slow, too awkward, not flashy enough. But Victor didn't care what they said. He put his head down, trained harder than anyone else, and slowly, painfully began to grow into something different, something special. And that is where the journey really begins. Because Victor Gyökeres wasn't handed anything. He had to take it. And over the next few years, he would go from being the kid nobody believed in to the man who made the football world stand up and take notice. At 16 years old, Victor Gyökeres was still invisible. While the footballing world fawned over the next Messi or the next Ronaldo, Victor was grinding it out in the frozen pitches of Sweden's lower leagues, barely making a ripple. Bromma Pojkarna was a club famous for churning out young talents. But even there, Victor wasn't the golden boy. He wasn't the top scorer in the youth teams. He wasn't getting called up to Sweden's national youth squads like others. In fact, most of the coaches weren't even sure if he would make it as a professional at all. But Victor wasn't looking for applause. He was looking for progress. Every extra training session, every sprint in the freezing rain, every lonely hour practicing finishing drills while others had already gone home, Victor was there. Quietly, relentlessly, building something nobody else could see, and slowly, it started to show. By the time he was 17, Bromma Pojkarna's first team was in crisis, relegated, humiliated. Their top players were leaving, their attack was non-existent, and when they had no one else to turn to, they looked down into their academy and found a desperate, hungry teenager ready to take a chance. Victor Gyökeres made his senior debut not because he was a prodigy, but because there was literally nobody else left. And what did he do with it? it, he made himself impossible to ignore. In his first handful of games, Victor showed the fans and the coaches that he wasn't just there to fill a jersey. He was there to fight, to run, to drag his team forward whether they wanted to go or not. He scored crucial goals. He battled defenders twice his size. He led the line like a man possessed. And when Bromma Pojkarna dropped into the Swedish 3rd Division, a fall from grace so brutal it could have buried the club, Victor didn't sulk. He didn't ask for a transfer. He stayed, and he fought. Week after week, he carried the team on his back, scoring goals, creating chances, chasing every lost cause. It wasn't glamorous football. It wasn't pretty, but it was survival. And by the end of the season, thanks largely to Victor's tireless efforts, Bromma Pojkarna clawed their way back up into the 2nd Division. At 18 years old, Victor Gyökeres had gone from being overlooked to become the club's savior. But there was no fairy tale ending waiting for him yet, because just as Victor was starting to dream bigger clubs, bigger stages, reality came crashing down again. Bromma Pojkarna, desperate for money, decided to cash in, selling their young striker to the first foreign club that showed any interest. It wasn't Barcelona, it wasn't Juventus, it was Brighton and Hove Albion, a mid-table Premier League club that didn't even plan to put him in their first team. It should have been the breakthrough. Instead, it was another cold, harsh reality check. Victor was about to find out that escaping Sweden was only the beginning of a much bigger, much harder fight, because making it onto the big stage and actually belonging, there are two very different battles, and Victor Gyökeres was about to be thrown straight into the fire. When Victor Gyökeres arrived at Brighton in January 2018, it was supposed to be the beginning of a new life. He had fought his way up from the frozen fields of Sweden. He had proven himself when nobody was watching, and now, finally, he was stepping into the bright lights of the Premier League, except Brighton didn't see him as ready for the bright lights. They shoved him straight into the under-23s. Instead of running out at Anfield or Old Trafford, Victor found himself playing reserve games in front of 200 people, and yet, like always, he kept his head down and got to work. In his first full season with Brighton under-23s, Victor scored 14 goals in 31 matches across all competitions. He didn't just score tap-ins, he showed everything: power, speed, intelligent movement, and clinical finishing. There were whispers that he could soon break into the first team. He got his senior debut in the Carabao Cup, a 1-0 loss to Southampton, then an FA Cup debut against West Bromwich Albion. Tiny steps, tiny openings, but just as it seemed like the door was creaking open, it slammed shut again, because Brighton didn't see a star striker, they saw a project. They decided Victor needed another loan, another development plan, another detour away from the dream. This time it was Germany, a move to FC St. Pauli in the 2. Bundesliga. For a young striker still trying to find his identity, it was a brutal transition. New country, new language, new system. But Victor didn't complain. He adapted. Across the 2019-20 season at St. Pauli, he made 28 appearances, scoring 7 goals and providing 4 assists. Good numbers for a young foreign player in one of Europe's toughest 2nd divisions. Good enough to make Brighton think he was finally ready? Not quite. When he returned to England, Brighton loaned him out again, this time to Swansea City in the Championship, and this move would nearly break him. At Swansea, Victor was starved of service, starved of chances, starved of hope. He made 11 Championship appearances, scored 0 goals, registered 0 assists. The fans barely noticed he was there. The coaches lost faith quickly, and within months, Swansea terminated the loan deal. At 22 years old, Victor Gyökeres wasn't just stalled, he was plummeting. In Sweden, he had been a lifeline for a broken club. At Brighton, he was an afterthought. At Swansea, he was a ghost. He returned to Brighton in early 2021 with shattered confidence. No place in the first team, no future on the horizon. For most players, that's the end. A forgotten name, another what-if story, swallowed by the brutal machine of professional football. But Victor wasn't built like most players. He had come too far. He had fought too hard, and deep inside, he knew this wasn't the end. It was just another mountain he had to climb. There was still a fire burning inside him. The same fire that kept him alive in Sweden when nobody cared. The same fire that had dragged Bromma Pojkarna back from the dead. And when Coventry City, a modest championship club, came calling with a lifeline, Victor grabbed it, not with fear, not with hesitation, but with the quiet, burning rage of a man who knew the world had counted him out far too soon. Victor Gyökeres wasn't done yet. He was just getting started. By January 2021, Victor Gyökeres Gökeres was at the lowest point of his career, a failed loan at Swansea unwanted at Brighton. No goals, no hope, no future. But when Coventry City came calling, offering a desperate loan move, Victor grabbed it. Not because it was glamorous, not because it was promising, but because it was the only door still open. He signed with Coventry on a cold January afternoon. No fanfare, no big welcome, just a simple hope to somehow stay alive in professional football. At first, it didn't seem like anything would change. His first few matches were rough, low touches, barely any chances, the same doubts creeping in. 3 goals in 19 appearances, another Ma return, just another Swedish striker struggling to find his way in the rough backwaters of the championship. But what nobody saw was what was happening behind the scenes. Because for the first time, Victor found a club that believed in him. Mark Robins, Coventry's head coach, didn't just see a struggling striker, he saw a machine. Rusty, yes, but powerful beyond belief. And together with his coaching staff, they started rebuilding Victor from the ground up. First came the mindset, you're not a winger anymore. Robins told him, you're not a backup striker, you're the main man, you're our battering ram. Victor listened, and for the first time he believed. In training, he ran harder. In the gym, he grew stronger. In his mind, he built walls no criticism could break. When the season ended, Coventry didn't hesitate. They made the move permanent, paying Brighton a fee of around £1 million. For a player Brighton barely remembered, it felt like a small transaction. For Coventry, it was the best business they would ever do. Because once Victor had a home, once he had coaches who trusted him, once he had fans who chanted his name, he turned into a monster. In his first full season, 2021-22, Victor Gyökeres exploded. 17 championship goals, 5 assists, availability in every single match. Championship Player of the Month in November. He was no longer drifting into wide areas, no longer a confused kid trying to fit in. He was now a full-blown number 9 bullying defenders, dragging his team forward and scoring goals like his life depended on it. But that was only the beginning. The following season, 2022-23, Victor took it up another level. 21 championship goals, 13 assists, 50 appearances across all competitions. 2-time Player of the Month winner, named in both the EFL Championship Team of the Year and the PFA Team of the Year. He didn't just play, he dominated. He carried Coventry all the way to the Championship playoff final, 1 match away from the Premier League. They lost that final to Luton Town on penalties. A heartbreaking end to an incredible season, but nobody blamed Victor, because without him, Coventry would never even have gotten close. By the summer of 2023, Victor Gyökeres wasn't just a championship star anymore. He was a wanted man. Premier League clubs called, scouts buzzed, agents circled, but Victor was done playing second fiddle. He didn't want to sit on benches. He didn't want to risk being forgotten again. He wanted to be the main man somewhere. They would bet everything on him. And that's exactly what Sporting CP offered. But that part of the story, the explosion in Portugal, was still to come. Because first, Victor Gyökeres had to walk away from England, from the league that doubted him, from the country that almost broke him. Not as a failure, but as a storm that was only just beginning. You would think a season like that would slow him down, that he might relax, that he might ease off the gas. Wrong. Victor Gyökeres comes back for the 2024-25 season even hungrier. By December 2024, 23 goals in 18 league games, 4 assists, top scorer in Portugal, leading scorer in the UEFA Champions League group stages with 5 goals in 5 matches, including a thunderous Champions League hat-trick against Manchester City, outscoring Erling Haaland himself. The world can no longer ignore him. Newspapers in Spain call him the Swedish Force. Commentators in England call him the one that got away. In Sweden, he's already being whispered about as the next Zlatan. But the truth is, Victor isn't trying to be the next Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He's becoming the first Victor Gyökeres. Sporting's Champions League dream. With Victor leading the line, Sporting topped their Champions League group, beating the likes of Club Brugge, Leipzig, and even outclassing Manchester City on that famous night in Lisbon. For the first time in years, Sporting fans start to whisper the impossible. Could they actually dream of the Champions League semi-finals? With Victor Gyökeres, anything suddenly seems possible. By the summer of 2024, Victor Gyökeres was no longer just the underdog story of Sporting CP. He was the fear. He was the striker opponents game planned for and still couldn't stop. The player fans came to watch because they knew something brutal, beautiful, and unforgettable was going to happen. And after conquering Portugal in his debut season, Gyökeres was now determined to prove one thing: he could dominate Europe. Having returned from minor knee surgery over the summer, there were some doubts: could he match, let alone surpass, his insane 2023-24 numbers? The answer to immediately in Sporting's 2024-25 opener against Casa Pia, Gyökeres was a battering ram. He scored twice and assisted another in a 4-1 demolition, and that set the tone. Match after match, he bulldozed defenders, attacked space with speed and power, and found the net with ruthless efficiency. Within a 10 league matches, he already had 14 goals and 3 assists. He was averaging 1.4 goal contributions per game, and his playing style had evolved. While still a physical menace, Gyökeres now showed greater composure in tight spaces, better link-up play, and a frightening ability to turn defenders on the half turn, but Victor remains focused. In every interview, he says the same thing: "I'm here to win trophies with Sporting. The future will take care of itself." He's not in a hurry, not anymore. Now, for the first time in his life, Victor Gyökeres controls the pace of his own destiny. Sporting had unfinished business in Europe, and Gyökeres made sure they started strong. In his first Champions League match of the season against Lille, he scored the opener in a clinical 2-0 win, but that was just the beginning. The defining performance came at the Alvalade against Manchester City, a club with a €1 billion squad and a generational striker in Erling Haaland. But on that night, it was Victor Gyökeres who stole the spotlight. He scored a Champions League hat-trick, yes, against Pep Guardiola's Man City in a jaw-dropping 4-1 victory that sent shockwaves through Europe. Each goal was different: a back post poacher's finish, a solo run from midfield capped with a curling strike, a close-range blast after bullying 2 defenders off the ball. It was domination, not luck. And after the final whistle, journalists weren't talking about Haaland, they were talking about the masked monster from Sweden. By November 2024, Gyökeres had already scored 23 goals and provided 4 assists in just 18 matches across all competition. He was leading the Portuguese league in goals. He was tied for top scorer in the Champions League. And most importantly, he was showing that his 2023-24 breakout wasn't a fluke. It was just the beginning. Sporting had never seen a striker like this in the modern era, and European scouts were circling. Manchester United, Arsenal, Barcelona, and even Bayern Munich, all watching, all preparing bids. But Gyökeres wasn't thinking about transfers. He was thinking about legacy. When the Champions League round of 16 arrived in February, Sporting were drawn against Club Brugge. On paper, it seemed straightforward. On the pitch, Victor made sure it was. In the first leg away, he scored once and set up another in a 3-1 victory. In the second leg at Alvalade, he grabbed a brace, sealing Sporting's passage into the quarterfinals for the first time in over a decade. And with every Champions League goal, Gyökeres' legend grew. He wasn't just matching the elite strikers of Europe, he was outshining them domestically. Sporting were ruthless, thanks to Gyökeres' relentless goal output, including a hat-trick against Maritimo, and crucial winners against Benfica and Porto. Sporting pulled clear at the top of the Primeira Liga. By April 2025, they had one hand on the league title. Gyökeres' league tally, 31 goals. His overall tally across competitions, 40 goals and 8 assists. And he wasn't done yet. Every game, every minute, he played with the same fury, as if he were still the rejected kid at Brighton or the overlooked striker at Swansea. Because deep down, Victor Gyökeres knew in football, no dream stays alive by itself. You fight for it every single day, from the cold streets of Stockholm to the forgotten shadows of England's lower leagues to the roaring nights under the lights of Lisbon. Victor Gyökeres' journey isn't just a story of talent, it's a story of stubborn belief, of nights spent doubting but never quitting, of being overlooked, loaned out, underestimated, and yet choosing to fight harder every single time. Today, he stands among Europe's deadliest strikers, but if you ask him, he'll tell you he's still just getting started. Because for Victor Gyökeres, every goal, every match, every broken record is not a destination, it's fuel. Fuel for a dream that refuses to burn out. And as Europe's biggest clubs circle, as the Champions League anthems grow louder, and as new challenges await, one thing is certain: wherever Victor Gyökeres goes next, he won't just play the game, he'll change it, one thunderous goal at a time.
So now you understand that Victor Gyökeres wants to improve himself. Victor Gyökeres was a late bloomer. Victor Gyökeres wants to come and prove himself. He wants to change the game, and that is the challenge. A lot of reports were saying he will not come because he wants to play in Champions League. But the thing is that Victor Gyökeres, under Ruben Amorim, and the Bond made him to the striker he is today. They just want to continue this journey, and Victor will be a Manchester United player. The stars are aligning, according to my opinion. Do you believe he will be a Manchester United player? Well, please do leave a comment in the long comment section below. Thank you for watching. This has been Mick Ruby from MUFC Realist TV, and I hope you got a really true insight who Victor Gökeres is and what he can bring to Manchester United. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you till the next time. Bye for now.